Dialed in to Bucks and Brews, you might hear something you can use. Like tips on your cash or tips on the suds. You're gonna want to use the smarts of these studs. Cause they know the brews, and they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks. So listen up, cause shit's not funny. And save yourself some beer money. Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and
Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and Brews. Welcome back to Bucks and Brews. Nick,
David,
we haven't met in a while.
yeah, it's my fault.
You haven't drank since like May on a show.
I've been trying to, supposedly lose weight. It's not been going well. Instead of drinking, I just eat more. So, but tonight, though, I am drinking the tried and the true, always the blue Bud Light.
I mean, you do love Bud Light.
I say it was my birthday not too long ago. I had Bud Lights for that. I figured I'd join. You have one of my top 5 favorite beers of all time.
I am sponsored tonight by my lovely daughter for my birthday. North Coast Brewing, independent since 1988. It's a barrel-aged Old Rasputin Russian Imperial Stout.
Yes.
My wife goes, "Is that because we want to be like Russia?" I said, "I think more that we want to be like 1930s Germany, but
Oh, say,
Mr. Lowry, what do you have, my friend?"
I have Athletic Brewing Company Upside Dawn Golden Non-Alcohol. So thanks for that. Appreciate it.
You are very welcome. You're sponsored by me.
I am. Thank you.
Scott, are you drinking anything, my friend?
Yeah. I picked up a Radaburger Pilsner, some sort of German brand.
we're on the Germany kick.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Mike, how about you?
I am just drinking Coke Zero tonight. I got a late night of work to do after this, so
Work is so overrated.
I agree.
So as anybody that's joining us live can see, we are joined by a esteemed panel here, Mr. Lowry on the end here, who is a University of Michigan graduate. He's here to throw in his political knowledge, which we will need.
I understand a little bit about economics too.
Yes, you do.
All right.
We are joined by Mike Van Someren, who's running for the 33rd district in Wisconsin, and hopefully he's going to win because he's got great ideas. He went to the University of Wisconsin, so you two are not allowed to fight.
That's all right.
And
My dad did too. So.
And then we are also joined by Scott Bennett, who we've had on several times now. We absolutely love Scott. He's got great content. If you want to find him, I'm going to plug Let's Make Him Pay, Substack. Go find that. Sign up for that. He's got lots of great info out there. So if you gentlemen want to say anything about yourself before we get started, go right ahead. I actually came up with questions this time, so I'm going to get
We've never done.
What's that?
Come up with questions before.
Yeah, I know.
We don't do questions before. We do everything on the show.
Let's be honest, okay? So you guys are literally... I have 0 college degree, and I think between the 5 of you that I'm talking with have more college degrees than I've been in a room of people. So, again, I'm just going to sit here and drink Bud Light because
don't shoot it.
I will. We're not supposed to drink Bud Light. It might turn me gay. So if I start turning gay along this way, just let you guys know it's just.
I think that's whiskey.
Say.
I don't know. Isn't that what Kid Rock said?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did, but he's an idiot.
Whatever.
Bob Ritchie, we don't respect his preferred
Bobby
name.
boy. That's
Michigan own.
All right, what do you got, David?
So, all right, let's kick it up. We're going to talk.
Didn't you say we should introduce ourselves?
I did.
If you want, I didn't hear anybody speak up.
No, okay.
Who wants to go?
Scott,
introduce yourself.
Sure. Oh, you guys were mentioning university educations. I also went to U of M, so I went to the U of M. Well, you already said my Substack and my TikTok and all that. I don't really have much else to introduce with. So I'm ready to rock whenever.
all right. Michigan degree is all you need.
My money's on Mike. Though.
Okay, yeah.
6'9" and a football player.
I mean, he did back up a Hall of Famer.
Okay, well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I remained a backup, but no, I'll introduce myself quickly. The only non-Michigan grad on the panel, University of Wisconsin, so a bit of a slouch, I guess. Played football there for a couple of years, 4 years, and then now I'm a practicing lawyer, and I'm running for the state senate here in Wisconsin in the 33rd Senate District. Official announcement coming very shortly. So,
fantastic.
But in the meantime, we're out here trying to get people to understand that they're important and that they actually are the reason that our economy works, and that we need to stop giving so much deference to the people that already have a whole boatload of money.
Yeah, fuck them.
And Mr. Lowry.
Uh, as you said, I'm a frequent guest. I do have also a degree from Michigan, political science degree. I'll say 94. I also like to introduce myself as a former Republican and recovering politician, right? So I did work on a number of campaigns back in the 90s at the state local level, ran a few state Senate, state House races, congressional, and worked on the Bush-Quayle 92 campaign. So but then the party left me behind shortly thereafter. And in fact, the person who left me behind specifically in the Republican Party was Betsy DeVos, the former education secretary. I will also say that it's not surprising that a number of my former colleagues find themselves in very hot water these days with our judicial system. So that's just a little fun fact about my background.
All right, so tonight we're going to talk the economic and political climate in the U.S. It's a hot issue. I wanted you three because I consider the three of you experts. Nick and I dabble in this, but we like to go to really people that know much more than we do. So I have prepared some questions. We're just going to start shooting off some of these. I did have them reviewed by the lovely Wendy Lowry, and she said some good questions, and then she gave me some more ideas. So if you don't like what I have to say, everybody blame Wendy.
Wendy's my wife, and she is part of our live audience
Yeah, she
in
is
studio.
listening in studio on headphones. So let's just start with this because this is something that everybody worries about. I'm going to start with Scott. Scott, do you think the U.S. will avoid a recession this year?
Avoid a recession. I mean, it's possible. You know, they're pumping everything they can to keep this rally going as long as they can. I think it's possible that, you know, because I've been feeling like the bottom was going to fall out of this economy for a long time. I put a lot of my stocks into cash a long time ago. I've just been waiting for the bottom to drop out, and still hasn't. But I think so much of it hinges on the continued existence of the petrodollar. And, you know, if something like that, if the BRICS really get it together and can threaten the petrodollar, in addition to all the tariff stuff that Trump's doing, then we're going to be in real trouble. But, you know, some of this stuff is just so hard to predict, I think, because, you know, you don't really see it coming too much. I have a bad feeling. I really don't like the trajectory. I don't think the broader real economy is doing super great right now. I think everybody is stressed. I think so many people now living paycheck to paycheck, and 70% of the economy is made up of normal people like us, powering the economy. And when we're hurting, and we stop spending money, that's when things really get hairy. So I would definitely say it's likely, but I'm not good with crystal ball predictions of that nature, really.
Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I'm not somebody that makes predictions in that regard. Some people have said that we are already in a recession. You know, recessions are generally predicted backwards, right? It's usually after the fact. They're like, oh, turns out we were in a recession. Yeah, I think that the real economy has been in a recession for a number of years. I think that we saw some real growth under Biden, but didn't give it enough time to really take hold. So I do think that there's a lot of people, you know, when you have 50 to 70% of the country living paycheck to paycheck and not able to handle a $500 surprise bill, I don't know how you can call it much different than a recession. So, like, there's going to be a whole lot going on. I think that to Scott's point, they have been doing everything they can to pump this up. But the further we get away from, you know, the rule of law and things like that, the more that we are going to lose the ability to even keep things propped up artificially, because people even with the money are going to sit there and go, how much backing do I actually have? How sure am I that I legally own this stuff? And that's one of the biggest concerns I have with the entire administration, is that the further and further we get away from a rule of law in following the rules, even if you don't like the outcome, the more and more we get to a feelings-based economy, which I get that our country, that the stock market is all vibes and feelings, but the real economy has existed on hard numbers and do people have the money to spend? And if they do, they spend it. But as people start to worry that the courts aren't going to actually carry the weight that they're supposed to carry and all that kind of stuff, I think that we have a good chance of running into longer and deeper recessions until we get to a point where I don't know where the end point is on that.
I absolutely agree, Mike. I couldn't have said it better. And the only thing that I would add to that is now, in addition to the, um, I think it's a kind thing to say the erosion of the rule of law. I think maybe is a bit too generous, but the backsliding, ignoring the rule of law in this country. The other thing that's really, I think, going to hurt us economically is the institutionalization of misinformation, right? So we fired the person who provided jobs numbers, and all of a sudden somebody comes in from the Heritage Foundation who can't spell economics and has some charts that the orange fuckwit likes. So that's all we can talk about now. So it depends who you ask if we're going to go into a recession. But I agree with Mike. I think in terms of the real economy, in terms of because of the upward movement of capital to the from the bottom 50% to the top 1%, the continued movement of money and just basically stripping people of their economic power. It's all about to come crashing down, and hopefully a recession will be as bad as it is by the end of the year.
So just to speak about recession for a minute, technically a recession is 2 negative GDPs in a row, and we were positive in the second quarter.
Yep.
Obviously, we're in the middle of the third quarter, so we don't know what that's going to look like. But
I think we do know what it's going to look like, but what
we have a
it's
good
actually
feel.
going to be, right? No, I say we know what the government's going to say it is.
Yeah, the government's going to say it's positive.
And then how do we measure it otherwise?
Well,
right?
When we look at it, I feel like we're in a false economy because
Exactly.
yes, you can sit here and say that things are positive and people are still spending money, but when you talk to people, real people, and of course we're all real people, and we talk to normal people. The people I talk to, they're trying not to spend money because if they spend money, they're afraid they're not going to have any more. So you might take a weekend, like Nick went on a vacation for a week and he spent a lot of money. And he's not going to, I know him, he's not going to spend a lot of money the next couple, 3 months because now he's building up the money he spent.
Right. But then getting back to Mike's point, though, what happens if we do have a crash, like a serious crash, and the government decides not to honor the FDIC rules, right? We're all fucked.
Then everybody's losing their money.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So those are the kinds of scenarios that 6 months ago we would have said would be an Onion headline, and now it's reality. In fact, we're living in the Onion timeline right now.
Yeah, we are. Everything's upside down. Left is right, right is left.
Yep, that's Orwellian for sure.
Nick, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think, you guys all hit it perfectly. We are not, we don't have a crystal ball. We can't see it. Scott, the fact that you pulled money out of stocks to make it liquid cash. I have a lot of friends in the real estate realm that have been selling houses. I'll be honest, I've been selling houses. When we talk about the economy, I have a house in the number 2 best market in the entire nation, right, for multiple months in Jenison, Michigan. You guys can look it up. And I'm struggling to sell it. I finally have an offer, knock on wood. Hopefully this thing goes through. But we're talking, we used to have, this usused to be a 50,000 over asking, very much bidding type of thing. And this is I'm selling it right now and I'm struggling.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie, I took originally a $10,000 less offer, plus then they came back and renegotiated it. And now it's me. I'm just just get rid of it. I'm not gonna argue over 600 extra bucks. But that's where we're at.
You gotta have you have to have the gold to bury in your backyard.
That's it, right? And compared to what we were thinking, for me, I'd rather hold it as a rental, but the smart economic thing is to, hey, let's just get rid of it. I'm still going to make some funds and do this. But
well, you're one of those people after the Great Recession of 08, 09.
Yeah.
You made money.
Yeah.
Because you hadn't bought anything before that point.
So that's when I started.
And you came in after that point and you're like, oh, I can buy this.
It's a fire sale.
But I know that history repeats itself, and I might as well be in a position to buy that low, right? Sure, I'll get caught and something won't be as low as I think it is, but I'll turn it into a rental and hopefully let it ride until I get to that point. So
So let's stay on this truck and talk about inflation for a minute. So inflation was horrible under Biden. That's all you heard about was inflation, inflation, inflation. Even though by the time he got out of office, inflation was largely under control, and it had been for a couple of years. So this year, the Fed has targeted a 2% inflation for the year. Now, things were going pretty well. In May, it was at 2.7%. But of course, what is it starting to look like?
Yep.
So estimates out there think that it could hit 4.6 by the end of the third quarter, and then finally relax to about 3.4 by the end of the year. So we're seeing that jump in inflation. As to your point, they may or may not publish that because it all depends on what the Fuhrer wants, you know, Pumpkin Patch Palpatine. So Scott, being somebody that speaks a lot on the economy, what do you see with inflation right now? What are you thinking we're going to head towards?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw more inflation. I think the real negative thing compared to past inflationary periods over time in American history is that wages aren't rising. So costs keep going up, inflation keeps rising, but everybody's wages are being massively suppressed.
Yep.
So the working class is not keeping up with inflation. So all of this inflation is really hurting normal folks who are trying to buy groceries. And like, it was such a big deal during the election talking about grocery prices. And that's because nobody's getting big wage increases to go along with all this inflation. So, you know, what happens every year is inflation keeps going up and we get maybe a 2% raise or a 3% raise if you're lucky. And plenty of people don't even get that. So that ends up being a wage cut over time.
Yep, in real terms, absolutely.
You know, inflation sky high over these last few years. Nobody's recovering from that because because wages are being intentionally suppressed by the Fortune 500 and others, you know, employers all across the country. Nobody's saying, oh, well, you know, we had this huge inflationary period and now we should raise wages to go along with that. Nobody's saying that. And this is a testament to the power of elites at this point and capitalist owning class is that they feel no compunction at this point to raise wages. And because unions have been suppressed and decimated so intensely over the last 40 years, there's no real coordinated pushback on that. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if inflation kept going up. I mean, with all this quantitative easing and stuff we've been doing for going on 20 years now, that it has massive inflationary pressure on the larger economy, and there is no relief. So my feeling is that the bottom could drop out because of that, because eventually people are just going to reach a point where they can't keep up anymore. And so they stop paying loans or stop paying credit card bills or, you know, something like that. People just reach a point where they just can't keep up anymore. And so they don't. And so at that point, the economy really does take a hit.
Mike, a follow-up?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that there's important. So I'm a practicing lawyer. I do business transactional law, and I think that's really important to make the distinction between the multinationals, these entities that can exist almost extraterritorially, right? The only entity that's really large enough to regulate them is the federal government or the state governments. It's very different from a corporation. Like, I don't like to say corporations because I could have a corporation with just me, right? So there's a lot of variance there. But the largest companies, I mean, people want to talk about how inflation sucks, and they want to blame the government, and they never want to talk about the fact that the government doesn't set the prices.
Yep.
These multinationals do. They set the prices not only on the stuff we buy, but on the price that they'll pay for labor. And a lot of companies are the only game in town when it comes to labor. So people don't really have a choice when it comes to getting those higher wages. So there's all these things playing into it. And the other thing that I find really frustrating right now about inflation is that I'm seeing energy prices, particularly gas prices, start to go down. And I don't think there's any point in fighting that. I mean, my area, I'm seeing gas prices not ridiculously low, but they're in the 285 to 275 range. And that's lower than the 295 that we were seeing for a long time. And people are thinking that this is some great win for the current administration. And it completely ignores the fact that gas prices typically go down when the economy starts to slow.
Yep.
And so when I see gas prices come down, I actually worry that this isn't some sort of, great win for the average person. And yay, I get to fill up for a whole lot cheaper. I start to worry about when our price is going to start skyrocketing elsewhere and people are going to not have jobs, right? Like this is the stuff that I look out for. It's kind of a counterintuitive mark because, inflation this past month, they just released the data today. It was at 2.7%.
Yep.
Energy prices are what dropped it down. But that's also because that those low energy prices come on the backs of an economy that added what 12,000 jobs this last month, like
It's
in
around here.
258,000 job revision. Like
Mhm.
there is a lot of slowing in the economy. So that that drop in gas prices, I think, is more bearish than it is a good sign that these tariffs are starting to take hold. And any recession we have, any inflation we have, it's going to be completely self-inflicted. We actually had the chance to have what they call the perfect landing or the soft
Yep.
landing, where we managed to get inflation under control. Yeah, we had really high inflation, highest inflation I've seen in my life. I'm 40 years old, and we had this because of supply chain issues. We had companies that
Mhm.
we saw were taking advantage of COVID to raise their prices. And they haven't done anything to lower their prices because once you get used to paying those higher prices, guess what? You just keep those prices there and you keep banking those profits.
Right.
And you see this over and over again. We actually have, and what I really get frustrated with is that we don't have enough competition. We don't have the government putting enough pressure on these companies to actually get them to do the right thing. Because people think that companies are going to naturally do the right thing, that the market will take care of it, and completely ignore the fact that the government is part of that market. And so you see all of these things. And so, yeah, I think inflation has a very good chance of going
Mhm.
up higher than anybody wants to admit, especially if you're on the far right. Even though you're seeing gas prices go down, I think you're going to see gas prices go down. They're going to be like, yeah, inflation's coming down. It's like, what about everything else you're paying for? You can't afford food, you can't afford healthcare, you can't afford your rent, but hey, you can drive around for a whole lot cheaper than you used to be able to. Super. Can't do
Yeah,
anything.
right. Yeah. Well, it's like that happened during COVID, right? When the whole like global economy slowed down. That's when we saw the last real serious reduction in
Mhm.
in fuel prices and things like that. But look at what happened with everything else, right? That's when all that began. That's when all those price increases. And I think this time it is self-inflicted. And but
Yeah.
that's exactly what we're going to see. And I think the key thing to remember, which also kind of incorporates the idea of the lack of the stagnant wages, is we talk about inflation, we're really talking about people's perception of affordability, right? Like and the reality of the affordability. And I think I saw a survey, I want to say probably October-ish of last year before the election. And this because the economy and immigration were the two big issues. 60 some percent, low 60% of people were concerned about grocery prices. 89% now. It's never been that high before. Because in the past, when we've seen inflation go up, we've seen a corresponding increase in wages. So the real impact to real income was less. And Mike, I think probably the last time I barely remember this, right? I'm older than you are, that we saw that type of inflation was in the Carter years. And but because of there were still unions were still fairly powerful and so forth, you did see a corresponding increase in wages and so that really lessened that impact. So it wasn't really so much of an affordability issue. People were still eating. Things like mortgages and stuff were a problem because of the interest rates. But speaking of interest rates, I think the other thing here is if that guy is able to force out Jerome Powell, we're fucked. In the sense
Yeah,
that
that's the problem.
he's gonna want to bottom out interest rates, and we're not gonna step it down. And then you see the money side of the inflationary pressure. And I hate to keep using that word, but there's a lot of ways in which we have to potentially just become totally fucked in the next few months.
Yeah, this country is at a
Oh
precipice
yeah,
right now.
absolutely.
And, let's talk about the last time we had a prosperous middle class.
Hmm.
It was World War II through the early 70s.
Yeah.
And why? Well, the New Deal from Roosevelt, and they decided to pour money into working people because working people drive this economy.
Yep.
Let's face it. The people making the parts and the people doing the regular jobs, they're the ones that push this economy. But for some reason, since Reagan, we've convinced everybody that all of a sudden, everybody that's really working, they don't work very hard.
Yep.
And now you need to worry about that guy over there. He might be from another country and he's going to take your job.
Yep.
And we're seeing that with all of these people that tend to get rounded up for no reason whatsoever other than they're brown. I'm brown. I'm worried about being rounded up.
Well, you should be for other reasons.
Absolutely true. I mean, if they looked at my phone, they'd be like, he hates this.
If you leave the country, you're not coming back. I'm just letting you know that.
I'm not leaving the country.
And like, okay, that's horrible. I have a let's say it's so bad how true that is. I have a friend of mine who is just like you, actually.
Yeah.
So like Persian of look, and so he he went on a cruise, Virgin. He's very wealthy, high up type of a thing. And he goes, yeah, so I lose my phone or my smartwatch, come back, and then all of a sudden I'm detained for an hour and a half. And he goes, I don't understand. And he tags Richard Bronson and all. And I was like, I was with my buddy, I'm sitting here thinking, and my wife goes, buddy, you're brown.
Yeah.
And I've never it's hard because I never look at you as brown, right? Like, I mean, the jokes of like, yeah, you're Mexican, but like, he doesn't understand. He's never looked at himself and said, oh shit, like.
So let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
So I sent this to you. I sent this to Jim, Scott, and Mike. I would like you to weigh in on this. So my ethnicity, which we know very well because somebody sitting across from me went through my entire family tree. I'm English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, Polish, a lot of Polish, and Persian. Talking to my father after the orange dipshit bombs Iran, I sent him a message. I said, this orange motherfucker. And he sends me a message back and he goes, it needed to happen. I'm like, well, I'm not going to talk to you for a while because you're a fucking moron. So he called a couple times. I sent him to voicemail. I finally pick up the phone and I'm talking to him. And I said, well, you know, I'm a brown guy. And he goes, but David, you're Caucasian. I went, right. I'm half Caucasian. I'm half Persian. He goes, no. Persians are Caucasian. And I went, wait a minute. We're Iraqis. And he goes, well, they're brown. Where the fuck do you come from? Well, I come from Iran.
Yeah.
Right.
Mike might actually have the answer to this as an attorney. Maybe not, but
attorney.
I like the look on Scott's face right now.
After you told me that, I'm like, what the hell? I actually looked into it, and apparently there's a federal court case.
Yes, there is.
Okay, all right.
But again, Jim, am I a white guy or a brown guy?
No, well, I don't know, but I mean, to look at you, I would say you should be worried about being rounded up.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And that's the thing. It's not what a piece of paper. We've already decided the rule of law doesn't really exist anymore. It's what the guy in the mask with the gear and the dip and the assault rifle. It's what he thinks you are, and that's all that matters.
The best part is nobody's going to see Scott's face right now, but his mouth is around his knees because he's trying to sit here and reconnoiter the fact that I'm not brown.
Well, okay. If I could just talk about this a little, I think, to your point, David, is, this is completely a subjective thing. There's no objective, I don't know. There's no objective white person. It is an imaginary thing that that can be anything anybody wants it to be. And this is, when we make comparisons about Trump to the mustache man in 1940s Germany, 1930s Germany, the whole idea here is creating in-groups and out-groups.
Right.
Back in the 1930s, the way they did it is they said German-speaking people are the in-group, right? So that was people in Germany, of course, Austria, people in Czechoslovakia, even in Denmark, and all this area was all, people were German-speaking people into France, Alsace-Lorraine, all that kind of stuff. There were German-speaking people all over that area. And we know who the out group was, right? The main out group was Jewish people, but there was also communists and anybody on the LGBTQ spectrum.
People who are disabled.
Did I say communists? Because definitely communists.
You did.
So they were the out groups, right? So those are the ones who are going to be persecuted. And it's all about scapegoating. And this is what we're seeing right now is you're scapegoating, you take immigrants. This is an out class. This is an out group that's being created.
They're the others, yeah.
And so, and that outgroup can be as broad or as narrow as is needed at the time. So that can include people of Persian extraction, like you, David, or it can include people of, from anywhere in Latin America, from anywhere in Asia could be included. I mean, people of South Asian descent, Indian, Pakistani, could also be included as brown people, right? So it's all it's all just depending on the way the wind blows and what's convenient. But once you create these in groups and out groups, and you say, okay, white folks here in America under Trump, those are the in group, right? So these are our people. So this creates a class of people who get privileges because they're in the in group, and all the out group people have their privileges taken away, and they can be, deported extra legally without any due process. I just love, it's so ironic to me that all the law and order Republicans out there, completely, what is law and order if law means nothing? What is law and order if we don't have habeas corpus? If we've been around since the year 1200 or
there
earlier.
There is no law without habeas corpus. That's bottom
basis
line.
For the system, right? So, like, if you take that away, there is no law and order.
It's the will of the dictator. Then it's the will of the king, right?
Person, and so again, we return to subjectivity. So it's all about coloring in whatever lines are convenient for advancing whatever goals they want. So that's what's happening on a larger level, is in groups and out groups. And it's not just immigrants, it's also trans people. It's also communists again. On the left of the spectrum.
But deranged left-wing communists this time, right? You have to
socialist.
There's a few more adjectives, I guess is all I'm saying with this guy.
The next group, there's another group coming up, and that's I agree with everything that's been said. Due process, like how do you determine somebody's illegal if they don't go through the process of being determined if they're here legally? Like there are so many different paths. Like that part drives me nuts. The law and order crowd that doesn't want the laws to be applied except as they see laws are applied. It's like that's not how it works. Otherwise, you're going to get arrested for every speeding ticket, even if you're going 40 miles an hour in a 55. Like you don't get, there's no due process. So truth doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
But there's another group, and I think people are starting to see this, and that's women. Women are the next group that are going to be the other group. You're starting to see that. And you're starting to see it with, Marjorie Taylor Greene, of all people, just stated the Republican Party is anti-woman and anti-regular American. It's like, welcome to the party, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, look, you've said some awful things. I don't ever want to hang out with you, but thank God that you got onto the same page, because look, the Dobbs decision, I read that case, complete lack of any sort of coherency or anything that resembles precedent. Like, first of all, the court sua sponte, or so on their own, just said the entire Roe v. Wade decision makes no sense. We're going to overturn it. That wasn't even the question being presented to them.
Yeah.
They just went and did this, which is completely against Supreme Court's own rules. But Dobbs went away. Now they're talking about getting rid of Obergefell. Like, they're like, all of this stuff is starting to happen. So, what happens once you start to put these people as true others is they need another group to scapegoat, because they've already taken care of the immigrants with all these crackdowns. They've already taken care of the LGBTQ. Now they're going to move on to the women. And then it just creates a smaller and smaller circle. And you saw that in the 1930s. That's what happened with Mustache Man, is that as his circle got smaller and smaller, there were less people to do the fighting other than, by coercion. And, when they ran into the Soviet army or the US and the Allies, like, there were fewer and fewer people because he shrunk his circle, because everybody became a threat. And that's what we're seeing the same thing.
And that is the trajectory of authoritarianism, is that in-group becomes smaller and smaller as those that are grasping onto power become more and more frightened, right? So they go from ruling by intimidation to falling and being intimidated, right, by the masses. So, there is an end to this ultimately. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later, but it's never good for those folks. And so as they become more desperate, that in group becomes smaller and smaller. That's the lesson of history, right? With all tyrants.
I know Nick wants to interject. I'll let him interject in a minute, but we've had it said a couple times, and I'm going to say why it's said. So Mike and Scott have both referenced Mustache Man because they're on TikTok a lot, and you can't say Hitler.
You just said it.
I did, but I'm not on TikTok right now. We're on Twitch and we're on a podcast, so we can say that shit. So anytime they refer to Mustache Man,
that's why
it's Hitler, because they will
they
will get penalties on TikTok for saying fucking Hitler.
Wow.
Go ahead, Nick.
Wait, it's like fucking Hitler or just Hitler? Just asking for, you know, this is a conversation that for the longest time I was fighting, right? I mean, we talked about it. I used to tell people all the time, like if you compared somebody to Hitler, you just didn't comprehend how horrible Hitler was, right? Like when the economy got stopped in Michigan from Gretchen Whitmer, which is, our governor. Everybody's like, "Oh, she's Hitler. She's doing this." And it's like, she didn't cost a fucking life. Like, there's a difference between saving a life, and yes, you might not have wanted your life saved, but versus taking lives and forcing this. Like, they're two separate. And so I used to fight this with people all the time. And I'm like, look, once you say this, you've lost the conversation with me. You've lost credibility, you've lost respect. But now there's too much adding up. There's too much getting to this point where it's like, holy shit, we're at this point, right? And again, I always go back to this into the January thing, right? Like, that bugs me so much, right? When somebody can do that type of stuff and still be alive in a country that has had terrorist attacks. I'm the millennial in this fucking group because you guys are all old. So, but like,
Mike should be a millennial.
I'm an elder millennial. I'm 40 years old, born in 84.
Okay. Oh, okay. I just turned 37 last week. But we've gone through ridiculous tragedies. We've gone through so much, like school shootings. We've gone through, 9/11. You guys have all been there, but like, that's our youth. That's our thing, right? And so
your formative years were very tragedy after tragedy.
And so, but look at this. It's just getting ridiculous to me. So, I don't know. I think when it comes down to me, I've now switched to the point of like, it's going to take something serious from somebody to change where we're headed and how we're headed there, right? You said every group's going to get targeted, right? It's starting out as the immigrants, which is not even all immigrants. It's like brown immigrants, right?
Yep.
You don't hear anybody talk about the Netherlands. You don't hear anybody talking about
the white people. The people from South Africa.
It blows my mind. And so then, but you're getting to the right. Women are. I mean, we were talking about this right before we got on. Like, oh, women shouldn't be a holding of power in the military. I felt like I was watching the scene from Anchorman, right? They could smell the blood, right? You're all in danger. How fucking stupid are you, right? But it's really getting to the point where somebody's going to have to step up. Something's going to have to happen, and we can't let and the amount of cost, right? Because I mean, we talk about it. You're a millennial. Congrats, I'll give you the win. We're both millennials, but there's my parents come from 6. My dad has 6. My mom has 6 brothers and sisters, things like that. Like everybody's, you're the only person I know your age that only has one kid. You're the only child. But like, literally, now nobody's having kids. Things are going down. Yes, people are gonna be like, oh, it's cost. Look, we need to continue to grow, and you do that with people, right? Making population growth is going to help everything grow.
So I have a listener comment.
Let's hear it.
In this country, after the Civil War, it was pitting the poor white men against anyone else. Gave them someone to hate, which made them feel better about being themselves, which I would absolutely agree with, because again, Lyndon Johnson said it. If you can make the lowest white person feel better than the richest black person, you'll win.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. In fact, I think if you look at
working class against itself, this is a very, very strict divide and conquer. It goes back to Sun Tzu or even earlier than that, right? It's if you can get the working class to turn on itself. So it's all the white workers versus all the immigrant workers, or all the male workers against the female workers. you get the larger the group, the better. And I completely agree with you all talking about women. I mean, you talk about the next on the agenda for the hard right is going after divorce laws and repealing divorce laws.
Mhm.
That's after the abortion, of course. They're talking about killing all birth control. Like, take stripping rights away from women. And, you can bet that banking and other things like that will be close on the heels of all that, just to create another class of secondary citizens. But it's all about dividing and conquering, and keeping the working class fighting itself and keeping the working class from noticing that they have a lot more in common with all of the 99% of working class people versus the 1%. That's what they don't want us to remember. That's what they don't want us to see. And they really to unite against them.
That's the key. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, to follow up on Scott's point, and this was talked a little bit earlier, is how the working class makes this country go. And I think most people would agree with it, from a fact that we're the ones working on the lines or working in the office buildings, putting the docks together, whatever. I'm white collar, so to speak. I grew up blue collar, but was lucky enough to get a law degree. But nobody talks about the fact that basic economics tells us that the working class keeps this country going because we spend the money. Like, everybody thinks that businesses create jobs and they do all this kind of stuff.
No.
And I have been on this crusade on TikTok to try and get people to recognize their value in the economic system, which is you spend the money. No business. I work with businesses all the time. Businesses do not start unless they think that they have a customer.
Right.
If they don't have a customer, they don't start because they're not trying to run a charity. They want to make money. And so if you are not there, if we are not there to buy, there will be no business. So it ipso facto has to start with us. And the way that most of us get our money in order to be those customers is by selling our labor. So the idea that, we are just being entitled and we want more money, this goes right back into the business owners' pockets.
Yep.
Maybe not as fast as they wanted to, but it goes right back into their pockets.
It absolutely goes back into their pockets. And the more that we make, the more we spend, the more goes into their pockets in terms of that slice of the pie. The problem is, particularly since the 1980s, is that we've changed how the pie is configured, right? And we've had trillions of dollars move from the working class up to the oligarchs, and they don't want to change that configuration of the pie.
No.
And because Elon Musk might, his value might reduce from $250 million or $500 million down to $100 billion, right? And it really it all comes down to that. And these fucking people in Washington and other, I mean, it's not just Washington, because it happens in other parts of the world too. And this has been on both sides, I think, both sides of the aisle for a long time, is giving in, right, to the oligarch class. And I think the key thing here, and Mike, I'd love your thoughts on this. One of the worst problems that we've had as far as empowering these oligarchs with not just financial but political power is campaign finance.
Yeah.
Right? We allow these people to spend as much money as they want to, and that combined with the financial laws and and banking stuff like that, just create a situation where people, even like I'm a white collar guy too, right, Mike? And to the point where it's life is almost becoming unaffordable, because we don't have universal health care, because we don't have any kind of really social safety net. Even people who make a lot of, who are really sort of middle to upper middle class can be struggling with just a health scare or something like that, right? You end up with you end up with cancer, and all of a sudden you go from having a couple $1 million in the bank, or in investments for your retirement, to being broke, and that's bullshit.
Well,
Absolutely.
the campaign finance part, like, so I don't know how you guys have seen the show The Newsroom with Jeff Daniels.
Right. You know what? It's on my list. I haven't seen it. You guys
You
can
have to
see-
watch
Great.
it.
I've watched the one clip where he just goes off and he, because he
Yeah.
gets asked 3 times
Yeah.
why America's the best. Because
That's the first 5 minutes of the entire
Yeah,
show.
of the entire
Yes.
it's
series.
like it is such an amazing thing.
It is.
It's such an amazing, well put. Because again, David and I talk about this because I have too much love for America and like very proud of being an American, right? And so then to listen, and it's just like he's absolutely right. Like we are 27th in fucking education. Like it is stupid to think we have so many abilities to be the greatest, and that's my problem. Like, that's the problem with you and I, like being coaches. We see the potential within
Yeah.
so many people. It's
We
like
do.
I see the potential within America to be like the fucking greatest thing that's ever walked planet Earth, right? And I'm like, let's go. And we just shit the bed.
It's all self-inflicted.
But I say
all
it
self-inflicted.
is on my list. I'm writing it down right now.
You
So
need,
I
you
can
need
do
to
it.
watch it. The writing on there's phenomenal, but they talk about campaign finance on there because they cover Act 10 here in Wisconsin, and they also cover Citizens United.
Yep.
And the idea behind Citizens United was, that allowed corporations to spend whatever amount of money they wanted to on campaign speech, as
Yep.
long as it was independent speech. And the idea was that they were going to first do that, which was going to give unions a whole lot more power. But then they were going to go after the unions. And that's what Scott Walker in Act 10 was supposed to do, was to
Yep.
kill unions. And then you'd have the oligarchs with true power. Now,
Mhm.
it's taking longer to kill the unions, especially in the most recent years where we've seen an uptick in union popularity. But
Absolutely.
they talk about all of these things that we're dealing with right now in the newsroom. And it's a phenomenal show. Highly recommend it. I watch a ton of television. I've always watched a ton of television. Me being a millennial, I was parked on my rear end watching TGIF every Friday.
But yeah, eating pizza because that's what you did, right? It was
That's right.
Pizza Fridays. And Jeff Daniels is coming to concert here at a very small, like it holds 350 people venue, and I really want to go. So I think it's tomorrow night. I'm trying to like open up my whole life to
I love him.
dude. Me too.
He's great.
He's from Michigan, which is great.
I used to know his parents quite well, actually.
Really?
Yeah, they're from Chelsea, and I was running campaigns down there, and we would buy, because they ran a lumber yard, and we would buy like all of our science supplies and stuff from them.
Oh, I forget that both of you I never use Bucks and Brews to my abilities or to my but it's like I forget that both like you're running for political right now. You have so much experience. I'm getting so frustrated. I want to run for something political now because that's just who I am. Like I have to be the change, right?
I'm trying to get the eye candy to run down in Kalamazoo because I know I'm not electable because I say fuck too often.
No. Becoming part of the currency, though.
It is, I know.
I would like to ask a question, actually,
Please.
of our other guests, of everyone, but I'm particularly interested because I think a lot of what we're talking about, we're talking about where on the deck we're putting the chairs. We're on the Titanic deck. We're going to put the chairs, right? Because if we don't have free and fair elections and we don't have rule of law, none of the rest of this really matters, right?
Why are we doing it?
Yep.
Right.
So, Mike, you're running for state senate in Wisconsin elections next year. Why? Do you think that elections are going to matter by then? I mean, clearly you're running, so I'm assuming you do. But why?
Yeah.
Why is that? And the reason I asked the question is, I'm genuinely, as a political operative, I've always just assumed the question, right? Like that, assume that's always going to be an option, right? That the people will always be sovereign. But I mean, do you think that this next election is not that you stand a chance because you have a better message, but do you think that you stand a chance because when you win, you'll be allowed to take office?
Yeah, I don't think that we have those barriers yet. Do I worry that we are close to a situation where that won't matter? Absolutely. I think the Texas Democrats right now are doing exactly what
That's
they
why I
should
asked
be
the
doing.
question.
Right. So
Yep.
we had a very similar situation during Act 10 where they tried to where they actually did strip collective bargaining rights from public sector workers other than police and firefighters, which how they're not public sector workers, I haven't figured out yet. I think it was that they gave money to the right political party that time. But I didn't agree with the senators leaving the state of Wisconsin at that time, mostly because I was still borderline Republican. I was making my shift to Democrat at that time.
Yep.
But also because that they had won an election. This was policies that they were going to do. It wasn't the same as what I see as an illegal gerrymander, which they're basically demanding Democrats show up for and be complicit in them helping them break the law. I think that that's a very different scenario. And this idea that if they show up, they're just going to go ahead and pass these new maps in the middle of the decade. Like, look, gerrymandering is awful. I think every district should be as close to 50-50 as possible because not only do I want it to be a true contest, I want the people that win, and hopefully I'm one of those people at some point, to be scared that if I make the wrong move, I'm going to be out. Because
Amen.
as important that I win as it is that I can lose, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, they don't have any reason to listen to anybody but the people that already agree with everything that they're going to say. And you get people like Donald Trump that can walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and nobody's going to say anything.
Well,
And
somebody
so,
will say something, somebody will praise his ass,
Yep.
right?
right, exactly.
You
And
know?
so that's my concern, right? Is that I want to make sure that I'm not a politics guy. I ran for Congress in 2022 because nobody was stepping up.
Yep.
And I felt like somebody had to step up because otherwise we're going to get stuck with it getting worse and worse and worse. And so, yeah, I do think that we aren't there yet, but we are dangerously close to the precipice, a lot closer than I ever thought we would be. And
I
it's
agree.
hard not to get fatalistic when you start looking at everything that's going on.
Well, and beyond just sort of the question of the moment of, will we have fair elections or and watching what's happening in Texas and things like that. I'm trying to decide where I want to spend my time in the next 18 months or whatever, right? Because, or whatever, however long 16 months, whatever it is now, because I think that there's still a lot that we can do as citizens. I mean, it's all ultimately going to come down to us. We're not going to be able to count on Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, right? Or Hakeem Jeffries. We can't count on them. And I think a lot of what I'm seeing from what they're doing, and even what our member of Congress here in West Michigan, Hillary Scholten, one of the first Democrats, one of the only Democrats ever to be elected to Gerald Ford's old seat. Well, I consider a lot of what she's doing to be almost like collaboration, right? Because she's going along with the system that is clearly not working, and she's still trying to be quote unquote bipartisan. Well, in an authoritarian regime, I think the better description of bipartisan is collaboration, right? And I think that probably unwittingly, a lot of elected Democrats are collaborating because they think that the system is not as broken as it is. And so I'm just trying to get a sense for, do we need to throw down, everybody go to Washington and start protesting 24/7 by the millions? Or do we stand a chance of really having a political contest that, if not fair, can at least result in the reestablishment of some sort of popular sovereignty.
Yeah,
Well,
I think.
Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead. So I was going to say, to me, it's a lot. I've been watching a lot of baseball lately because the Brewers are hot.
Go Cubs.
So I've been watching a lot of baseball, and to me, I've played sports all my life. I think that sports make a great metaphor for a lot of areas of life, and I think that our politics are very much like baseball, and we need a lot of people on the left to get out and vote and participate. And sometimes you're going to hit a single, sometimes you're going to hit a home run with a candidate, sometimes you're going to hit a pop fly. But we can't be sitting on the bench because the right is going to bat no matter what.
Yep.
And as frustrating as that is, we need people turning out in the primaries and getting the people that they actually want in office into that position. And if they don't make it through, then sometimes we got to hold our nose to keep the other person out. I think that, and I know I'm going to get pushback from that because some people are like, this is BS. We've got the wrong people running and we aren't giving them a chance, like Bernie and Hillary in 16. So I know that there's pushback there, but in my mind, when you've got a party on the other side that has been this consistently willing to throw away things that we thought were just a given,
Yep.
I don't know that we can sit out, and that's my own personal take on it.
No, you're right. And I think Bill Crystal, old colleague of mine, actually, right, he was Dan Quayle's chief of staff and neoconservative, whatever. He said something to him, and I'm going to paraphrase, but I thought it was very true. He's like, the far left has to realize that the middle left is not going to change and they have to accept it. And the same thing, the middle left has to realize the far left is not going to change. They have to accept it. But we all have to accept that we're the only hope, right? We have to work together. And there's no choice at this point.
Well, I'm going to piggyback that because I'm the far left.
Mhm.
I'm very leftist, but I vote for Democrats because I don't have a choice. Okay, it's vote for the Democrats or
Yep.
vote for fucking fascists.
No, I agree.
So I'm going to continue to vote for Democrats, even if I don't believe in everything they want, because they believe in a lot of what I want.
Right.
Nick?
Well, let's say I'll get Scott's take on this as well because I know he's chomping at the bit to get in. But I live in Ottawa County right now. I mean, if you go to local government, we have the most corrupt, we have the most fucked up local government that I've almost ever heard of.
Yeah, Moms for Liberty is all over it.
Dude, this is insane. But what I'll say is, right, the problem with our Democrats is we'll have 3 people like Mike who finally step up, and then those votes just get so split between the 3. But the Republicans, they're like, straight ticket Republican, boom, this is what the fuck you are, boom, you got it all day. And it's like, we can't get one solid Democrat to just go get this, right? Just everybody needs to pick this pony, jump on it, and we would change the culture of Ottawa County if the Democrats would just get behind this and say, hey, you know what? It's not perfect, but it's good enough, right?
That has to do with how the local rules work, though, in terms of being able to have multiple people on the ballot.
Scott, go ahead.
Yeah,
I have to step away for a second.
Jump in on this. There's a lot of stuff to cover here. I have a very different point of view from you guys. My feeling is that it's very clear that Trump and the Republicans are trying to dismantle our electoral system. So they're trying to make it so that it won't even work anymore. And that creates the idea that the Democrats are some sort of bulwark against fascism or for democracy. And I don't believe that either, because I think both parties play into this pattern. And, if the Democrats are only offering to hold the line, and the Republicans are offering, full-on fascism, full-on corporate control, oligarchical control, then this is the trap of the two-party system. The two-party system is a trap, and it's designed to take everybody who's frustrated and channel their resentment into a Democratic Party that is not going to do anything for them. Because, as we were discussing before, this is a money-driven political system that we have. And as a money-driven political system, oligarchs, the rich, have full control. And right now, with all of this attempt to dismantle the electoral system, they're trying to make it permanent. They want permanent control so that the people have no options. And unfortunately, this goes back to the founding. That's how our country was created. That's how our country was designed. That's how the Constitution was designed. Because as John Jay, our first Supreme Court Chief Justice, said, he said that the people who own the country should run the country. And that is what we have had since the very beginning. And that the system, all of the checks and balances we have, are designed to frustrate the will of the people, the will of the majority. We have a republic, which means minority rule. So that minority in this country, which we don't talk about openly, is the rich class. The rich class is the minority whose rights will always be protected by this current system that we have, from this Constitution that we have. And this goes back to the founding. But now the oligarchs have gotten so powerful. If we could just take a step back, David mentioned a little while ago the post-war period up to the 1970s, when we had 90% tax rates on the rich. And we also had a completely unique situation where all of America's industrial competitors were wiped out in World War II. Japan, Germany, Britain, USSR, everybody was on their backs. And it took them decades to get back into movement, into motion again. And in that period, post-war, the US GDP made up 50% of the world economy GDP. So talk about, sitting in the catbird seat after the war. We had it made in the shade. But what happened is eventually those competitors caught up to us. And the rich in the 1970s, you look at the Powell memo, other things like that, they were like, oh, shoot, we can't keep sharing the wealth because suddenly we're getting a smaller slice of the pie. that 50% of world GDP was never going to last, and we're never going to see it again. So at that point, the rich saw what was coming, and they said, we need to organize, and we need to change the laws so that we can control how campaigns are financed. So that's what gave us this full bore, and Citizens United was just like the death blow, where it goes all the way from Buckley Vallejo in the 70s up to Citizens United, of them, extending the goalposts a little bit more and a little bit more, where the rich can control a little bit more and a little bit more. And now it's like, now with Trumpism, all bets are off, because they can do whatever they want because they control the political system. And the Democrats need that campaign money just as badly as the Republicans do. So the system is a fraud, and it's time for a new constitution. And if we keep playing this Democrat Republican game, we're going to keep losing. And the authoritarianism will just keep advancing, because the Democrats are not up to the task of stopping us, because they too depend on the same class of people who finance the Republican Party. And if they want any of that money, they can't do anything that those people don't like. And the things that those people don't like are the things that matter to the bottom 95% of the country. Like, all the people who aren't rich are the ones who benefit from the policies that threaten the rich. The 90% tax rates. We haven't had an increase in tax rates on the rich for 40 years now. It's all been so.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay, but that's my feeling. So to me, it is moving chairs on the deck of the Titanic, because the Democratic Party are not our friends. It's good cop, bad cop. They're the good cop, and they're gonna tell us that they're gonna fix this. But when the rubber meets the road, they're not gonna do anything that threatens their donors. And that's what we need. We need people who don't represent the donor class to fight for the people. And we can't do that in this silly two-party system that we have.
No,
so we need
fundamental.
Yeah, I wouldn't defend the two-party system, but I would push back a little bit. I think, look, as somebody who's run now in my second campaign, most of the money that I raise, which I can tell you right now, everybody I've talked to in office that's run for office, the thing that we hate the most is having to raise money and having to get people to give us money to run a campaign. It's the worst part.
Horrible. It's horrible.
But you get that money to try and get people out to vote. Now, I'm not defending the two-party system. I'd love to see ranked choice voting in every state, and I'd love to see multiple parties representing different areas of interest along the political spectrum. I think that'd be great to get more voices in there. I'm not somebody that's ever shied away from any form of competition. That being said, if we are in a system where we have two choices, and those choices are authoritarianism or holding the line, I'm going to take holding the line for now. I still want to see change. I want to see changes that we saw in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I don't know that. I think the rich were trying to organize during that period of time, and they were getting a lot of pushback. I don't know that. I don't know that they just started in the 70s. I know that's when the Powell memo came out, and that's when. But I think they were trying to get themselves organized, and they were flustered at that point in time. But the Powell memo comes out. You get Lewis Powell appointed to the Supreme Court. You get all of these Heritage Foundation and all these think tanks out there to put out garbage that says, "Hey, this is how economics actually works." Milton Friedman becomes a thing, and the idea that supply drives demand becomes a thing that I still haven't been able to figure out how that ever caught on. But yeah, I think. I get the frustration. I really do. I think my view is if we're going to change the system right now, if we were to go to a constitutional convention, the way that it would happen, the way that I'm concerned it would happen, is that it would be run by the right, and we would lose even more rights under our Constitution than if we were to have a true constitutional convention where we had a majority of Americans show up and vote on it. Because I do think the vast majority of us agree on a whole lot of things.
Exactly. Exactly. And my point, I hear what you're saying, and I understand that fear, but the rich already run everything. The rich already control our government. So imagining that they would somehow take that even further at a constitutional convention, you can't go further than authoritarianism. You can't go further than dictatorship. That is the end of the line in elite power. You talk about fascism, that is the preservation of the existing class structure by force. And that is what we're watching in real time happening, is that they are trying to impose force to preserve this class structure with billionaires on top. And if you have a constitutional convention, yes, the right is organized. Yes, they would attempt to make things even, as James Buchanan, a contemporary of Milton Friedman, put locks and bolts on our Constitution to make it even more unchangeable, make it even more undemocratic. But this is what needs to happen, because there has to be a pressure release valve. And the public, you talk about all the things that are happening right now, authoritarian-wise, with Trump. There are a lot of things happening, and there's going to be an even bigger reaction. And the people, once all these policies start really hurting the average American, there's going to be a severe, severe counterpunch in the other direction. That's exactly why they're trying to game the electoral system right now, because they know it's coming. Yeah. And the Democrat is going to sit there and say that they're our only hope. Fuck that.
Yeah, I would never, as a Democratic candidate, I would never come out and say I am the only hope. I think that has,
that's
a massive amount of hubris. Yeah. But I got to say, I still worry, because people being as economically desperate as they are, FDR pointed out that you can't have true liberty without economic liberty, and that despots are made from people who are economically desperate. And I worry about the timing of a constitutional convention.
That's my concern, Mike. I think I agree. I've been advocating for one for decades now, but it can't happen in this environment. In fact, I see that as being the post-fascist, recovery, which I guess leads to another interesting question. We have a state senate, a state senator right now in Michigan who's running for U.S. Senate. Her name's Mallory McMorrow. I've heard her talking about this. I've heard a few. Gavin Newsom has kind of hinted at it, although I don't really trust him, after he befriended Charlie Kirk and some of Trump's other guys or whatever. But he's at least saying some interesting things right now. J.B. Pritzker has advocated for this. There's a sort of idea that we need to move forward. We need to hold the line, as you say. But what comes next? It can't be what we've had.
Right.
It has to be a major change. And I think maybe that's when we start thinking about major reform to the Constitution or a constitutional convention or something like that, right? But yeah, I would be very, very concerned about the timing if we were to try to do something like that right now.
Yeah, I think we need a new deal.
But
I agree.
That's why I'm talking about it now, because exactly as you say, we need to be ready for it. We need to have ideas about what we would change. And you talk about ending the two-party system with ranked choice voting, or ending any of the single seat districts. It's absurd. These things are all designed to frustrate popular resentment, to stop popular change from happening. So popular change will happen. It will happen.
Yep, absolutely.
So we could talk about this all night. I know David's ready to hit us with another question. This could be a 50-hour podcast episode if we let it. So it's not that I don't love it. It's let's hit up the next question.
Yeah, let's pivot to healthcare for a minute.
Okay,
absolutely, because Jim had mentioned it earlier a little bit about not having universal, and so definitely something
with cuts to government programs coming, such as the subsidies to the ACA.
Yep.
How do you think this will drive medical costs for people who are insured on the marketplace?
They're going to go up.
Yeah,
just
clearly.
Of course, they're going to go up.
So here's the example. My mother, right? My mom is on disability now, Social Security disability. But so she has, she's currently.
Does she have Medicare?
No, she has her own private.
Okay. On the marketplace.
Yeah, so exactly, marketplace. So Obamacare, right? Yeah. Currently, there's
ACA.
Is that what it is?
It is. It's the Affordable Care Act.
Excuse me. We should be correct.
I know something about this because I work for those.
So my mom currently gets $700 a month
in subsidies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so her insurance is very reasonable. It's like $70 a month.
Yeah.
She gets the coverage that she needs. She has the things. She's doing all the stuff. Now, when this goes away, I have to, my dumbass has to go in and figure out how to find ring $700 extra a month for my mom to be able to afford. That's if the plan stays the same at $770,
Right.
Which it won't.
Absolutely, it won't. Why the
Premiums are going to go up.
would it, right? Like,
Right.
and so, it's Michigan here. We changed the auto insurance coverage first versus, your healthcare coverage, and so that's changing. But so my mom is the prime example of what we're going to deal with. Because she's not at that age. I have to figure out everything in my life because I haven't paid attention, right? I've been very lazy in the sense of like, hey, let's just deal with it when we have to. I can make the money happen.
So
But-
Mike said it's going to go up. Here's the deal.
I agree, it's going to go up.
You find these people that are like, I hate Obamacare. Obamacare is the worst thing ever. And you go,
Because it costs them $20.
you go, but how do you feel about the Affordable Care Act? And they go, oh, I love the Affordable Care Act.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah.
Same fucking thing.
No, the words are different.
The words are different. Same fucking
You
thing.
said the word Obama, you gave him credit for
That's
something.
messaging.
Right.
Yeah, it's messaging.
Exactly. Yeah.
But people-
the Republicans sat there for years going, Obamacare bad. And their base went, oh, it says Obama in it, so it must be bad. But we like the Affordable Care Act. That sounds great.
Right.
Look, we're still fighting about Obama and the things that, every time something goes wrong for Trump, it's like, well, that was actually Obama's fault from way back. Like the
Yeah,
the thing that
1920.
people-
9 years ago.
The thing that people always frustrates me about our social safety nets is that they are one tied to income. And so if we're getting an increased burden on our social safety nets, it's because the private sector isn't doing its job and keeping people's wages up enough so we don't have as many people on the social safety nets. On the other side of it is those social safety nets are money that gets spent into the real economy that gets paid to people that aren't on social safety nets.
Right.
And the insurance companies, they're based on risk pools. They're based on healthy and unhealthy people. And
Yep.
look, I have my own problems with insurance companies, but they are based on a risk calculation where they have so many unhealthy and so many healthy people, and they have a number that they figure they're going to pay, and then they have a whole bunch of profit that they want to pay out as well. But what do you think is going to happen when Medicaid goes away and these plans aren't there? It's going to push a whole lot of people that were on a program that was much more efficient than the private sector. I mean, that's just a fact. That's not controversial at all. Medicaid is a much more efficient program as far as administrative and overhead costs go. It's going to take all these people that can't get on these plans and put them into the private sector. If they have anything at all, or it's going to put increased costs on emergency rooms, particularly in rural areas. And that means that those emergency rooms are going to need even more money, but the government's not going to pay it because Medicaid is gone. And so we're going to have all of these things piling up because people can't see that we have a very tenuous house of cards that was already starting to fall. And now they just basically pulled out a card in the middle of it and said, good luck.
Yep.
Right. And I would say that this week it's already happening here in Chicago. One of our hospitals just closed because the state federal money to pay for the Medicaid patients. So a lot more hospitals closing like that. But it's just like Mike said, it's about risk pools, and what's really underneath that is profit, because this is a for-profit enterprise. Our healthcare system is a for-profit enterprise, and all the companies that provide our healthcare are trying to make profits. And this is a very unfair situation because everybody gets sick, everybody has accidents, and the reason they have insurance is to cover those costs when that happens to all of us. But the insurance companies too are for-profit enterprises, so they are trying to increase profits, and it's very easy to increase profits when people have no leverage in the situation.
Exactly.
So that's why costs keep going up, and we keep paying more because it's all about profit.
Yep.
And we are our country is crazy for doing it this way. But this is, of course, the American love for capitalism happening in real time. Is all those United Healthcare, Blue Cross, and every company every hospital with several $1 million board members that are all presidents that are all getting, these executives are all getting millions of dollars. It's all because it's for profit. And other countries don't do this. Other countries don't have insurance companies that are run as for-profit enterprises. They're a private healthcare company. They're private healthcare insurers in Europe, and they are non-profit. They are not allowed to make a profit. And that's for a reason, because when you have the profit motive involved here, It's all about punishing people for needing this service. And they're all we are is just ripe suckers. The minute we have to go to a hospital or to a health, some sort of healthcare provider, all we are is just serving ourselves up, and they're just gonna squeeze every last drop out of us that they can.
Well, to Scott's point, I don't disagree with that. I think I'm a big fan of regulated capitalism. I think capitalism is a good system, but it's got to be very tightly regulated, because otherwise you get what we have now, which is really rent seeking. Our economy has become less about creating value for the everyday American, and really has turned into a rent-seeking economy where it just looks to extract as much cash while providing little or no additional value. And you can see it in everything from healthcare and insurance companies to the fact that every software that you used to get, remember when you used to be able to buy Microsoft Word and use it till it ran out, and
For free?
yeah.
Yes.
And now you have to pay a subscription every month. Now I just found out that you can buy it again, which is nice. But and then
a one time thing.
Yeah,
I have
you
it.
can buy a one-time thing again.
I say because I got so mad. I was the number one. All right, because I like to buy things one time. I don't want to pay monthly subscriptions.
You want to
I
own
hate.
it.
Right, just give it to me. Let me have it. I had to finally upgrade. Excuse me, because here I was 2025. Putting something from 1997. I was like, it still works. What do I give a shit? Like, I have the key code. I don't need to upgrade. It does the function that I need. I don't care if I have new hotkeys or things like that. It's insane to me how everything is a money aspect to people and growth and how it's going. I when it comes to healthcare for me, it's really weird because at the end of the day, it's these companies that say they're not for profit, right? They're putting up new buildings, and that's how they don't make their profit. It's great. I love expanding, right? But I don't know about you guys in your area, because we're all from the Midwest, right? And the nurses around here are unionizing, right? They're trying so hard. The east side of the state, I believe, already has. I know over here
Borges has a union. Bronson does not.
They have for a long time.
A long time, since my mother was there in the early 80s.
But Detroit is unionized.
They have, and now Quayle is getting in on this, which is a huge hot button issue if you go on Reddit. And I do want to touch on this for a minute. So user. Damn it! I said it again. Listener comment, standard of care at emergency rooms is already abysmal, even when they do get paid. And that's not wrong, because the ER tried to kill me like 5 different times.
And that's my wife and I were talking about this on our little road trip, right? And the union for the nurses isn't necessarily happy. For the first time, I agree with the union aspect. It is not for necessarily just money, right? It is just so that they have the right amount of staffing to offer the correct care, right? Because my wife's in the healthcare industry, right? Like, if a fall happens, that goes so much against it, does so much, and it's like you lose. I don't know how it works, right? But like, if you're an A rated hospital, having less staff, you go to a B, a C, a D, and you don't want that, right? So are you guys unionizing over in your areas?
Yeah, I believe that most of our nurses are union. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to check with a couple of my nurse friends, but I believe a lot of the nurses are unionized in my area.
Okay. Yeah, saying it's new. It's a new thing that they're working on here. West Michigan versus
exist. One great thing about unions is you can only be fired for cause. They can't fire you unless they have a reason if you're in a union, which is a great reason to join a union for anybody, because the rest of us are all right to work, and business acts like they can just fire you for anything, which is not actually true. But at least with a union, you have that protection, and you have the collective strength of the union working to raise your wages and increase your benefits. And like you said, actually protect the workers from situations where, it's all about cutting costs when it's a for-profit enterprise, right? So that means they cut costs that put worker lives at risk for falls or whatever. And, you need a union in that situation to say, whoa, we have people whose lives are being put at risk in your seat as you seek the profit motive. And that's a great reason why unions exist.
So Jim, do you have something?
No, I was
Okay.
just going to say, if we look at the history of unions, it actually takes us back to a time, at least, sort of in the modern era. I guess there were, trade guilds and things like that back in the day. But when we look at sort of the modern union movement, it was really kind of born out of the situation that we kind of find ourselves in now, right? There were oligarchs were in charge, and they were, had these factories and things like that with unsafe working conditions, and you had the textile fire and stuff like that, and people were, children were working in unsafe conditions. And this was at a time when, there were high tariffs and, just the oligarchs, they called them robber barons then, right? And then after that, you kind of had, Teddy Roosevelt and the progressive movement kind of was born, and that's kind of when unions became popular in the United States, was kind of born out of a reaction to that situation, which is where we see ourselves now. And so, these things are cyclical, and so that history gives me hope, right? Like that, and as we come out of this situation that we find ourselves in, we do have institutions and structures that we can fall back on that aren't necessarily, tied to our government.
Well, and so
Yes.
currently,
Go ahead. The answer to this situation. And don't forget that unions, just like he said, gave us the end of child labor. It gave weekends. It gave us the 40-hour work week. It gave us, paid holidays, paid vacation. And the list goes on and on. This is all because of unions, and this is why unions are demonized, and this is why the oligarchs are trying to kill unions. This is why Trump passed, with an executive order, eliminated 3% of the unionized government workforce with a pen stroke by saying that they wouldn't recognize public sector unions that exist and that have existed for a long time. And you talk about oligarchs, you talk about the owning class. This is because capitalism itself is a wealth concentrating machine. The whole function of capitalism is to concentrate wealth into fewer and fewer hands in a pyramid structure, you might call a pyramid scheme, perhaps. That is the function of capitalism. That's why I don't love capitalism. That's why I don't think that capitalism is better just to be regulated, because capitalism is part of the problem, because it keeps concentrating wealth. It will always keep concentrating wealth in this fashion, in giving us this super wealthy class, while the workers are the ones who actually provide all the value, unionized and non-unionized alike. It is the workers themselves who make the money that goes up to the top. And that's why unions to concentrate the worker power opposed to the concentrated power of the owning class.
I am happy to have a discussion on something other than capitalism. I haven't seen anything pure that could supplant capitalism. I'm not saying it's not out there. I'm just saying we haven't seen anything that has worked out. Socialism has always
very easy, and that is employee ownership, and that's also known as communism. But employees.
Well, communism is state ownership, though. Communism state ownership.
No, it is not state ownership. It is employee ownership. It is the ownership of the means of production by the public, by the people. So that can be in the state that has been tried in the past. But why not every individual worker unit owned by the employees at that place, at that workplace? There doesn't need to be a boss who makes $100 million because everybody below him is bringing in all this money with their hard work. The money should not all go up to just a few.
I don't disagree with that at all, but that's where I would come in with the regulated capitalism. We had a system at which we didn't have the owner making $100 million and everybody else making peanuts. We had a system where
look where we are. Look where we are now.
Sure, as we backed off the regulation.
This is always what happens. We are exactly where we were 100 years ago. We've come back to the same place because that is liberalism. That is accepting the owning class. That is accepting that these people should be collecting the benefits of our hard work, and it should not be concentrated into a few hands. Elon Musk does not deserve his billions.
I didn't say that.
Deserve his billions. They do not earn all the money. They steal that money.
I get what you're saying, but at the same point, I have never seen communism work either. I've seen every example of communism has been China and Russia.
Right now, capitalism is not working right now.
I get that, but it has worked in the past, and I've never seen communism work in the past. I get what you're saying.
Hey, so
I love this conversation.
Right back to this place.
Real quick, because I love to poke the bear. Both of you guys have become very well known on TikTok. So I was watching this this billionaire on TikTok talk about how he's the one stimulating the economy because he bought a yacht. And so actually what it did was there's 500 companies building parts for his yacht. So he's technically given jobs to 500 people to build that yacht, like each individual part, and also for the butlers and and then he buys the food to supply his yacht. And so he's gotten the grocery stores all around to be the person to supply. And so without the billionaire, you wouldn't have the need for those fucking jobs.
I love how you're just pouring gasoline right on this fucking fire.
so, but no, I say, guys, it really. So let's bring it back. Let's bring it back to healthcare real quick.
We're talking about healthcare
because I do have that. I mean, how many homes can a billionaire buy? How many? How many
I can give you the answer.
How many yachts can a billionaire own?
I agree.
It's not an efficient way to run an economy, to concentrate all this wealth into fewer and fewer hands. It's exactly the opposite. What we had back in the 60s and 70s was a well-paid working class that could afford to drive the economy because they had money in their pockets. They could afford, one single salary in a household, could afford a house, could afford a new car every couple of years. That's because the money was being put into the hands of the workers and not concentrated into the hands of billionaires.
Right. And that was when we were communist, right, Scott?
Well,
I have a listener comment.
Oh, sorry. No, I hear you.
Listener comment. If we go back to less global version of communism and think more on the order of a commune, like the stereotypical vegan hippies that all own a piece of their work. Some of those communities do work.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's a question of scale. Again, I don't.
Right.
I mean, Scott and I disagree to a point, but I don't. I want to make it clear. The problem that I have with capitalism is that when people hear capitalism, they think that I want pure capitalism where there's no holds barred and we reach a pinnacle, which is exactly what capitalism is designed to do. And I don't want that. And my point on regulation is to keep us in the constant building phase,
Right.
to make sure that we are creating that society of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, obviously with more civil rights for groups that didn't have it. Like, I'm not trying to take us back to that. But economically speaking, people had true economic choice. If a woman wanted to work, she could work, in wherever the couple structure might be. They could make their own choices, and they actually had that economic liberty. Right. That's what I would fight for. I wouldn't fight for what we have now.
It was that idea I think they used to call it the liberal consensus, right? And that was before my time as well. But it was this kind of idea. It was really, I think, championed by it was a post New Deal sort of economic model that was really, I think, championed by Eisenhower. And it was this idea that, you put these sort of structures, and when you say regulatory, it's really it's a guardrail against the excesses that you're describing, I think, Scott, right? Of capitalism, of unregulated environmental damage and unregulated access to whatever, which is exactly what Elon Musk is trying to do. That's why he came into this whole deal, is he thought he was going to strip away all these regulations, which I think to some degree he was largely successful with this whole Doge bullshit thing, but also he was in it to get deals for himself, right? For his companies, and those are just those are the worst instincts of capitalism allowed to run amok. And the whole idea of that liberal consensus was that's when like we put some guardrails around this, and then you try to let what's good about capitalism, the free flow of capital and ideas, and people being able to bring their ideas to market and find those customers that we were talking about earlier, and so forth, without the wealth necessarily being pushed so quickly up to the top. And I think that there's this sort of inverted pyramid idea with that, right? Or flattening that pyramid, truncating the top of it. And that's where things just went off the rails, I think, after Reagan.
Well, I just have to say that I have to disagree because I don't think I think it's a continuum and it's going to always bring us back.
You're right.
Because you talk about the liberal consensus in that time period was also the time period of the highest union membership in the country.
Right. But that's one of those guardrails.
That's bulwark. But what's always going to happen is that wealth concentration is the people who hold that wealth are going to seek to find ways to expand and preserve that wealth and that privilege. And it's always going to be that way. They're always going to be looking for every little way they can to subvert the public, to subvert the workers, to bash the unions, to kill the unions, to keep from taking the slice of the pie that they want. And they don't want to share. And
no,
that's
I agree. No, that's human nature, right? I agree. Absolutely. I agree with that. But
it's going to bring us back every time.
You're right. And it's a pendulum for sure. And I guess the challenge then is what structure works, right? Because I don't, I think, what's that?
Worker ownership works.
Yeah, but then I think there is an issue with the scalability of that, right? Like who puts the structures in the
Mondragon in Spain has thousands and thousands of workers, many different business units, multi-billion dollars every year that it makes in gross profits. And it's all owned 100% by every employee.
No, write that. What? Say that again.
What was the company?
Yeah. Can you say that again, Scott?
I mean, look, we've seen example. We have examples of it working here. We have ESOPs all over the place, and I'm a big proponent of them. I am not against any of this. What I'm saying is I am not the most imaginative all the time, and so, I haven't seen communism work because every time that's been tried has been state-sponsored communism, right? Not owner-centric. They're not worker-centric communism.
That isn't communist propaganda message that we've all been fed consistently since the 1930s.
Very well could be.
Never work, that it's only state sponsored, that only leads to totalitarianism. These are all propaganda messages that have been used to demonize the left since the 1940s and 30s.
Sure. And that very well could be. I'm just telling you that's been my view. I don't disagree on the fact that ESOPs are definitely a thing. For those people who don't know, ESOP stands for Employee Stock Ownership Plan. Like it'd be an employee ownership. There's a gas station on the East Coast, I believe, that's all employee owned, and it's made a ton of millionaires out of those workers. So yes, it absolutely can work. I just scalability, practicality. I don't know how you would get that to scale here without.
You wouldn't get it. Because the Democrats would never fight for it, and the Democrats would never work for it to actually expand this country to the left, because it threatens the donor class. It is a threat to the people who have all of the ownership.
Well, and the question becomes,
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, the question that I have is where does the private property start and stop then, right? Are we only talking about business? Or are we talking more of a Scandinavian model where we have private ownership of everything except for a lot of businesses? Or, that's the question that I think a lot of people would have.
Yeah.
I would say more public ownership, the better. And you have right now, we have a situation where more and more private monopolies, whereas a company, monopoly control in a situation, in a market, and they just can extract more and more profits. A perfect example, the healthcare industry. They have monopolies on these healthcare things that we all need, and they use those opportunities to extract more and more profits for a smaller and smaller group of people.
Well, and let's not forget that I've actually just read a book probably a couple months ago now. I finished it up, called The Myth of Capitalism, which is a very good book. I'd highly recommend it. And they talk about how a big driver in Nazi Germany was the monopolization of their industry that allowed for the political control that Hitler was able to establish, because they had these monopolies. So monopolies are not only bad economically, they're bad politically.
Yep.
Right. And look at what's happening right now. 100 years ago, we had trust funding. We had laws passed to prevent monopoly from forming. The biggest grocery store chain in the 1940s, A&P, Atlantic and Pacific grocery store, had 20% of the grocery store market in the country. Today, Walmart has 40% of the grocery. No antitrust laws are being used against them. The laws exist, but they are not enforced and they are not used to break up monopoly.
No, because of Bork. Bork came in, him and Milton Friedman came in and said that they added a principle that does not exist in the law, but it was the consumer, benefit of the consumer.
Yep.
And basically all these companies had to come in, they knew exactly what to say. This will lower prices, and their mergers got approved automatically.
And then we're surprised when grocery stores all raise their prices as inflation soars out of control.
Yeah. No, don't get me wrong. I think Lena Khan was one of the best and members of the administration that Joe Biden ever installed. I think she did a phenomenal job, and had the Democrats won, one of them. I had issues with Kamala. One of the things I was concerned about was that she was going to replace Lena Khan, because I won't disagree at all about the fact that Democrats, the biggest problem that we have right now is that we try to say we have policies that we say are good for working class people, and compared to the other policies, they absolutely are. But at the same time, at least on the national level, Democrats also try and court billionaires. So you try and tell workers that you're for them, but then you go and talk to the billionaires to try and get their money. And look, I don't think people are dumb. I think people can smell that out and they don't trust you. And I think that's a real problem. And so I was really concerned that had Kamala won, Lena Khan was going to be on the way out, because she had made a promise to Silicon Valley that she would minimize Lena Khan, because she was starting to get pretty close to their bread and butter.
Well, she's been close to Silicon Valley for, since she was running for state office in California.
So I kind of want to segue here, because we talked about this briefly, but we brought up Germany. So as this administration seems to be following the Third Reich's playbook into fascism.
Well, I've been calling them the Fourth Reich.
Correct.
Yep.
What can regular citizens do to fight back against this?
I would say that resistance happens internally. You decide that you're not going to cooperate, and you find ways, large and small, to not cooperate. And on top of that, I say protest is valuable. I think there's a lot of value in showing up bodily, physically, when you have the opportunity to say no. And joining a union is another great way to fight back, to build that collective worker power that we need to push back against this. But right away, the first thing is inside. You just got to say, fuck it. I'm not play along. I'm going to do everything, every little passive aggressive thing I can do to say, fuck this. I'm not playing with it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that 100%. I also think that they are doing a flood the zone strategy. And everything that they do is designed to distract you and get you worked up so you forget about the last thing that they did. And so I think, look, there's only so much bandwidth. And so you have to pick those institutions that you're most concerned about, and you need to defend those. And so I'm a big believer in the law, so I defend the courts. I talk about the courts, and I'm a big believer in the economy and the fact that we need more money into the hands of more people to allow them to drive this economy. And we need to get this economy working for them again. And so I will speak out, I will organize protests, I will do all of that kind of stuff along those lines. And I will take anybody, whenever I do something, the protests are just against these anti-American activities. And the worst thing you can do is comply in advance. The worst thing you can do is try to avoid the friction, which is what we're seeing so much from everything from the universities to these large corporate like media companies. All of that kind of stuff is compliance in advance. The universities, which are really hedge funds with an education arm, like they didn't need that federal money, but they wanted it. And so they're doing all the stuff that Donald Trump wants because they just want to keep that money coming, even though Harvard has what, an $85 billion endowment?
It's
They don't
crazy.
need
They don't need it.
$200 million a year from the feds, but they
Right.
want it. And so that's a problem.
I'm going to go to you in a minute, Jim. So you just said it, Mike. Do not comply in advance. There's a wonderful book by Timothy Snyder called On Tyranny,
Yep.
which I implore all of you to read. It literally will take you a few
You
hours.
can even read it. There's a comic book version, there's a graphic novel version of it.
You can get it on Audible for free.
Yep.
Listen to it. And one of the first things they talk about is do not comply in advance. So I know you wanted to say something.
You know, I do. And I think that you guys are absolutely right, right? You have to be the speed bump because, you know, the more of us, more speed bumps there are, the longer it's going to take them to overcome the inertia. The authoritarianism doesn't happen overnight. It happened very quickly in Nazi Germany because of the situation that happened. You know, they were already in a horrible economic depression. Their infrastructure was crap because of World War One. They were still recovering from that. There's all sorts of issues, and in fact, I would maintain that this regime is trying to get us into a situation like that. Right? That's why. I mean, Donald Trump isn't smart enough to realize that how tariffs work, but the people pulling his strings do. And they're trying to get us to a point where we're at each other's throats, where our economy is in the shitter, and so you know we become more and more desperate, more and more reliant on them. So we have to be the speed bump to slow that down. It's they're not breaking any speed records in establishing this fascist regime, but it's happening, and the more we can keep it from accelerating, the longer it's going to take them, and the more time we have to organize. The other thing that I'm going to say, though, and this is very, very, very controversial, right, is that the reason that there's this 3.5% idea, right, that if 3.5% of a population organizes in a sustained manner, they can control the outcome, they can establish their sovereignty, they can stop, you know, fascism. And this is kind of borne out in some ways, at more or less 3.5% over time. That's about 12 million people, right? The reason that works, whether the number is 3.5% or 6% or whatever, the reason that works is it makes people afraid. And right now, the reason that a lot of people, and you'll even hear occasionally, sometimes the Republicans will say the quiet part out loud. Lisa Murkowski recently admitted to this. Some other folks have said it. The reason that otherwise rational people in Washington, Republican office holders, didn't stand up to Trump, and particularly after and even some of them even went like crawling to him, like Kevin McCarthy, after January 6th, is because they're physically afraid. Their families have been threatened. They've been threatened. They realize that Trump, particularly after January 6th, 2021, they realize that Trump controls this mob of people, right? The way to fight that, and this is the controversial part, we have to make them more afraid of us than they are of him.
Oh, 100%.
And you do that by, you don't have to be violent, you don't have to be threatening, you have to turn out in numbers in ways that make them uncomfortable. What we haven't done yet is turned out in numbers in places that make them uncomfortable. If you had 24/7 protest at the houses of Republican members of Congress, their families would, and you're not, again, not being violent, but getting in front of, going to their offices, showing up in Washington, where they live, where they socialize, where they do everything they do in sufficient numbers, we wouldn't have this problem. And that's what needs to happen immediately.
Well, when we have a user comment again.
That,
Go ahead, Scott.
24/7 protests are happening right now in LA against ICE. And
Yeah.
It's
They need to be happening. They need to be happening in front of the White House. They need to be happening at our neighboring congressman's his house, right? They need to be happening in places that are going to make the Republicans and their families and I mean their spouses and their children, not because we're doing anything violent, make them afraid because it's inconvenient for them to get out of their driveway, get in their fucking faces and make them suffer. That's how we win.
So we have a user question here, and I want to get to that. We'll get back to whatever. Fuck me.
All these users.
Anyways, so a user, Jesus,
A listener.
fucking Christ.
It's a listener.
Listener said, we're basically in a lobster pot. It slowly gets worse because, you know, that temperature just gets turned up a little bit each time. How do you decide which issue is enough to say, all right, this is enough of this bullshit?
Well, that's the big question.
I think that's what makes the difference between an extremist and right, a person that is like left or right, and so everybody has their level of what takes them to be that extremist, right? Um, right, you're very far left, and we know very far right people, and so it's like, okay, you're an extremist compared to me. I mean, definitely, right? Like, so it's, I think to me that's opinionated, right? On how far you're willing to allow those types of people around. Because I mean, for you, you're gonna get along with people who definitely like anti, and I'm gonna be like, all right, that's a little too many of you people in one side for me, right? So, I guess that's my opinion. I think it's a very opinionated thing that I'm seeing, right? When is enough enough? You're the one that has to make that choice to like stop doing the stuff you're doing and then go protest, go do something about it, right? I mean, Mike's running for office, right? Like enough's enough. Like he's running, doing a change, right?
Right.
Whatever it takes to get you to take action. That's when that point becomes enough.
Yep, I agree. And
Yeah, I
for
agree
me,
totally. I think that it's a matter of time and it's a matter of
Yep.
perspective. And the people that are a little more extreme one way or the other might take less for them to get to that point. And the question is, when do we get to that point collectively? I mean, we were
That's
talking
the
about
key.
labor rights earlier.
Right.
We had people, when we were talking about labor rights earlier, let's not forget that not only did unions get us all of the modern workday and our modern work lives, but they've paid for that in blood. Like this was not an easy thing where the rich said, "You're right, we're gonna." No, it was taken from them,
Yep.
and so that point. It's a matter of when you get enough people that are agreeing with you that you get to that point.
Yep.
I would just add that it like I said, it happens internally, and it can be something like Nick's mom getting kicked off of her health insurance. It could be anything. It can be large or small. The important thing is you're like, no, I've had enough. This is I've seen the reality of the situation now, and I don't agree with it. And that's why there's an attempt to suppress by force. That's why
Yep.
why protests are being tear gassed and suppressed, and everybody's arrested. All they're doing is exercising their First Amendment rights to speak, completely constitutional, to say that you don't agree with this, and that's why those people are attacked and rounded up illegally, tossed to the paddy wagon and carted off to jail for an overnight stay, and then the judges just let them go because they didn't break any law. Right?
Sorry, our bad. Yeah.
This is the reason that force is brought in, and this is the reason trying to subvert the electoral system is because they know that these changes that they're making are going to be unpopular with the mass public, and they want to scare the mass public into silence.
Yep.
Well,
and go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, to Scott's point, where the Democrats holding the line. Let's say Democrats win in 2026, and let's say they even win the presidency in 2028, it's not going to be enough to just be like, okay, we've avoided no, there are major structural things that are going to have to be fixed to avoid this happening again.
Right.
And it may be, I mean, a whole rewrite of the Constitution, that's going to take more time. But if the Democrats do end up taking back power in 2026 and 2028, because I think you're going to have to get the presidency in order to do any of this. The number one thing on the list better be to put back and strengthen everything that we have seen get dismantled now. That's just the start, because we can't be this close to the edge and just leave stuff where it is.
Right. So I mean, now the next person knows the fast route to get to what they need. Right.
Right.
It is something I've said from the beginning. Right. As much as you hate on Trump, like Trump has proven how many loopholes there quickly are, right? He just says, look, I'm going to fucking do this. This is what's happening. Come sue me and then we'll figure it out later.
He's testing the limits of people to put up with it.
And so it's I give him quote unquote credit on showing how broken we really are and like how much needs to change. I hate Donkey Dunk Doug and Gangbang Greg so much, but like, sorry, what the fuck's that guy's actual name?
Which guy?
The Supreme Court justice that I hate the most.
Oh, Brett Kavanaugh?
Yeah, I say. Right, but like we're dealing with this whole LGBT now, like not being a legal marriage, right? I mean, the ability to be able to go back and we changed, not fucking we, these
They.
people changed Roe versus Wade. And you're watching the amount of extreme changes that have happened that people back then fought so hard to get to say, hey, this isn't as bad as you think it is. This doesn't affect you in any negative. And now we're at this point where it's okay, hey, it can just get changed. I mean, things can get it took 40 fucking years to get 1 ounce of something changed. And Trump is getting things changed in 45 seconds and then saying, not my problem, deal with it later, right? And it blows my mind.
Well, and I want to pivot here in a second, but I posted this on social media earlier. If you don't want gay marriage, don't get gay married.
Right.
I'm not getting gay married because I don't want to get gay married. I also didn't get stupid married because I didn't want to marry a stupid person.
Right.
But a lot of these people got stupid married. So
it's all about stripping rights and creating in and out groups like we talked about
Exactly.
before.
100%.
Exactly what it is, Scott.
So I'm going to hit us with a lightning round. I want to be respectfve of everyone's time because we're almost at 2 hours here, and I could go another 2, but
I could go at least 50 hours.
so I'm going to start with Scott because I know he loves economics. Biggest economic myth you wish would die?
That capitalism is the reason for America's strength.
Okay, Mike.
That the rich create jobs.
I was going to say that.
Oh, you got to come up with something else.
Biggest economic myth that I wish would die. This is an economic adjacent myth that rich people are smart.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree with that one.
Because I think that puts too much, like, people respect, particularly the ultra wealthy, too much, and they're not smart. Elon Musk is not a smart person at all.
Nick, what do you have?
I say that product sales equal good economics.
So I'm going to piggyback off Jim, actually. So I'm going to go with the myth that rich people actually worked hard for their money.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that. Rich people do not work at all.
No. One word to describe Congress right now.
Fucked up. Well, that's 2 words.
Say fucked.
Fucked.
Okay. Mike.
Old.
Scott.
Broken beyond repair.
Okay. Nick.
I'd say broken, but I'm gonna go with broken. You can't make me take another word.
That's fine. I'm gonna go with fucked, just like Jim over here.
Yeah.
It kind of is. What's more dangerous for the economy, debt or political division? Mike.
Debt or political division?
For what again? I'm sorry.
For the economy.
For the economy.
I'm gonna say political division.
Okay, Jim.
Yep, political division.
Scott.
I would say debt. I mean, look at how much of every one of our paychecks goes to a bank. How much for our car, for our college loans, for our
national debt. But
I was thinking national debt too. Yeah,
we're paying
yeah.
of our income to different banks. It's debt, and if we don't need to be paying private banks for this.
No, I agree. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Debt for sure. Though.
Yeah, I was thinking just at the national debt, and I would say if our political system wasn't so divided, national debt. I mean, that's a huge issue, and debt servicing is just so expensive, right?
So I'm going to lead off this one because we already know my answer is George Carlin's answer, debt, absolutely.
Yeah.
We already know my answer to this is George Carlin's answer. Is the American dream alive, dying, or dead, Nick?
Ooh, I'm going to be the opposite of all of you. I believe it's absolutely alive.
Jim?
It's dying for sure.
Mike?
I think it's alive, but I think we're fine. I agree. I think that we're finding that the American dream is about the fight, and we need to keep growing. So I'm going to say it's alive, but we're not we're not standing up strong.
I agree completely, Mike. It's that's why I said it's dying, is because I think the fight is leaving us.
Yep.
Scott?
If I kind of reject the dead or alive construct, and I would say that it's a fraud. It's a total fraud. It's a propaganda message designed to get us to buy into this with this idea that any one of us can be a billionaire someday. It's a fucking lie.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm going to say, because I subscribe to the Carlin thinking of this, the American dream is called just that, because you have to be asleep to believe it.
Oh.
If you ask Gen Z, the American dream is very, very dead.
Absolutely.
That was one of our
I
listeners.
think it's like 89% of Gen Z, like it's that high, don't think that they could have anything that their parents possibly had.
I think this one's tough. So I'm going to start with Nick. Most underrated economic factor that no one's talking about.
Mm. I think the factor would be, Powell, we talked about it in the beginning of the episode, Powell leaving, right? I think that is a huge factor that not enough people, I mean, some people are talking, but not enough.
Who appointed Powell?
Trump.
I say back in his first.
And he's pissing and moaning about the fact that Powell was appointed by Biden.
Right.
I will say most underrated economic factor to me is subprime mortgages are coming back. And that scares the shit out of me.
I was gonna say that.
I'm sorry. I'll leave you at the end. Scott.
We got all these too big to fail banks. They're going to start failing again.
Yep. And who's going to bail them out?
Us, we the people.
Mike?
Are we frozen?
Our hosts up there? Okay.
There we go.
Mike, you're
My
up.
big
Oh, I'm up. Okay.
If I could say
I
fact-
think it's the loss of the rule of law. I think the erosion of the rule of law is a factor that people are not taking into account nearly enough, and I think that that's going to create a situation where America is no longer going to be where everybody comes to invest, and then our debt is going to get more expensive. I think everything's going to go up because people are going to find somewhere else to do business.
Scott, you were going to say something. I cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Unions, unions are the biggest underrated factor. They've been, the rich have been crushing unions for 40 years with a goal at getting to this point. And the thing that could really get us out of this jam, the 99% versus the 1%, is by joining unions, bringing unions back. They've been flat on their back before. They were flat on their back in the 1920s, and then right in the 1930s and the 1940s, the biggest growth in American history for unions. So we can get it again, and unions are the answer.
Okay.
I think I don't know that it's true right now, but in a month and beyond that, it's going to be the institutional misinformation.
No, I could.
Let's say, I can see it.
So one of our listeners got it right.
Not even.
Yeah. One of our listeners feels that tariffs are the biggest underrated factor.
A lot of people talking about it.
Yeah. So I like this question a lot. I did not come up with this. This was with my wife. One historical figure you would want to handle today's economic mess. I'm going to throw this out there. Who wants to go first?
FDR.
Eugene Debs.
Teddy Roosevelt.
None of them. Say, let's go back to the beginning. Let's just go with Washington because that's where you start is in the beginning.
He had wooden teeth.
Yeah, man's willing to do what it takes, baby.
I will say I'm going to go back to Franklin Roosevelt because he did get us out of this shit once.
Absolutely, and
I thought I was going to say that too, but
I didn't think we can take
Yeah,
the
I'm supposed to, but fuck you. I make up the rule.
David showed David's rules.
that's why I picked the other. Okay.
Yeah.
If the 2024 election was decided purely on economic data, who would win?
Well, I guess
between
the answer has to be Trump, sadly.
I would think that's the answer.
Because
It kind of was.
Right.
Does anybody disagree?
Wait, say that again?
If the 2024 election was decided purely on economic data, who would win?
Between Trump and Kamala?
Yeah.
I would say Kamala. She should. I think on purely economic data, she should have won.
He should have. You're right. But I don't think enough people actually understand
that's why
the economic data. So if they look at Trump and they go, "Oh well, he's a businessman and he's smart, so we're going to vote for him because he has the best economic policies," which obviously he doesn't.
Well, I guess it's just a flawed question to me because based on
I think if you assume a rational person, it would be Kamala, right?
Yeah.
Assume a rational voter.
Okay, I got one left.
Yeah, let's do it.
One word for the 2025 economic forecast for the rest of the year.
Shit show.
Ooh.
I like shit show. Go ahead. You said slow.
Diarrhea.
Okay, Mike.
I'm gonna just say uncertain. I have no idea what it's gonna do. I don't know how well they're gonna prop it up. If they're gonna be able to prop it up, I think uncertain.
Well, my answer is scared.
Yeah. A lot of fear, absolutely, for sure.
I know it's one word answer. Mike, I say, Mike, real quick, just dive into it. I think we're going to get into a small political aspect. I mean, you're going to be running here, and so I think that's gonna build people a little bit, right? They're gonna think, hey, we're doing this, and you're gonna start seeing, right? We go back to the fake propaganda that's kind of out there and like these lies. So I guess that's where I'm saying, and the uncertain, it's just gonna come out, and these people are gonna say, oh, we're fine here, we're focused here. So I think with when you get towards that election part of time, it just always is kind of something. So, gosh, all right.
This has been fantastic.
This is one of my favorite. I don't love politics, but I enjoyed this episode so much. As always, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your family. We appreciate you guys listening.
How was your Bud Light?
Man, my Bud Lights. I broke our Bucks and Brews new rule. I completely forgot about it after I was through the sixth one.
That's a me rule, not a you rule.
I'm only supposed to have two, and I only drank one of my 6 packs.
This Old Rasputin was delicious. I also followed it up with a brunch cinnamon and maple hard cider from Farmhouse, which
that was
we love Farmhouse.
Yeah, actually,
very good.
I was expecting like a stout for the cinnamon maple, and then I ended up getting a cider, and I was like, "Ooh, that was fantastic."
Very nice.
So,
Scott, how was your beer?
It was terrific. Rataburger. Nice job. Nice Pilsner. Really have to pee now.
We've done that. Jim, how was your non-beer?
Wonderful. Appreciate you sponsoring me.
Absolutely. Mike, how was the Coke Zero?
Great. I'm caffeinated and ready to do some work after this.
Sorry. What I want to do is, Scott, tell everybody how they can find you. It'll all be in the show notes, but I want you to tell them.
Yeah, please find me on TikTok at Let's Make Them Pay, one word. Also, Let's Make Them Pay on YouTube, or Let's Make Them Pay book on Instagram. Or best of all, Let's Make Them Pay.substack.com is my Substack. Thank you, Nick and David, so much, and Mike and Jim. I had a great time. I really appreciate you having me, and I love the discussion today. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, when I get to Chicago, Scott, we need to go have a drink. Mike, how can everybody find you?
TikTok, X, Twitter, whatever the hell they call it now, at MVS, Mike Van Sumeren for WI.com, or I guess not the .com. My website, MikeVanSumeren.com. I am running for state senate. Check it out. I'd love to hear from people. There's a contact me. I read everything. So yeah, but guys, thank you so much. Scott, it was a pleasure meeting you. Nick, Dave, this was great. Guys, this was just a great conversation. I really appreciate different points of view. I love the fact that we don't have to agree on everything, but we can still have a good conversation.
Absolutely.
And that's what it needs to be.
Yep.
Well, and I really do want to follow up to this episode at some point, because I think this was a great conversation. Yep. Jim, how can people find you if they want to?
If they find me, I'm not doing things right.
Right. Jim is on Blue
Sky, James William Lowry. I think I can't Low. J-Low, but yeah, I got rid of all my other socials.
You did, yes.
Check it on Instagram once in a while.
I do not, apparently, because people ask for my Instagram all the time. But it's for us, yeah, find us at bucksandbrews.com, or reach out to us on Facebook.
Yep.
We're
always doing
one
stuff.
message away. So, guys, truly, this was a fantastic episode. Thank you guys for making time for us. We look forward to another one in the future.
Same here.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate it.
You've dialed in to Bucks and Brews. You might hear something you can use, like tips on your cash or tips on the suds. You're gonna want to use the smarts of these studs, because they know the brews, and they know the Bucks, and they know they can't help the stubborn fucks. So listen up, because shit's not funny, and save yourself some beer money. Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and
Bucks and Brews.
Bucks and Brews.